Welcome into 316 Soccer Show, coming to you live here from Granite City West. This is going to be our 2012-2013 MISL preview edition, and to my left, of course, Wichita Wings head coach LeBaron Hollimon. To his left, Newman head coach Cliff Brown, and then to his left, the founder and president of the Wichita Wings Youth Soccer Academy, Blake Shumaker. Let's get right to it. LeBaron, it's the Thursday before the season opener. Tomorrow you guys travel to Missouri, and before all that had to happen, there was an off-season, there was acquisitions, and what an off-season it was. 6 signings. Take us through a little bit about what the off-season was like, and I mean, probably pretty hectic getting 6 new guys in the door.
No, it was, well, the thing is, at the end of the season, we identified what we needed, and you look at the way our season ended, and we were defending great. We held teams to 10 points or less going into the fourth quarter, probably the last third of the season. Problem was, though, we couldn't score, and so when, Freddie Moojen went out with an injury, that was our target. We made a decision to part ways with Chile last year. That was a big offensive, decision. So we knew going into this season we had to strengthen ourselves with some offensive weapons.
And the main thing about Chile, I think what we lost was the distribution. After he left, while he was there, Jamar Beasley was so efficient in front of goal. Then after he left, he kind of lost some of that service, and that really hurt everybody up front.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Chile Farias was a talented footballer, and so, once we took him out of the lineup, then that's to be expected that we were going to lose a little bit offensively.
But going back to that, though, with what they lost, I mean, yeah, you lose a lot, but look what they've gained this year. What they did as an organization is they drew a line in the sand and they said, this is where we stand. This is it. This is who we are. We're the Wichita Wings. We're not. If anybody else wants to pick them up after this, we gave a guy his last shot. This is what our organization stands for. And you look at the 5-6 guys they brought in, the stats for some of those guys are unreal. They're great pickups. The league MVP, Miggy, as everybody calls him, Miguel. Yeah. Very, very good ball skills. His shots on target. We talked earlier a little bit offset about Miguel's three-point ability and some of these guys that you brought in.
And now
doing that.
He mentioned Jason, league MVP last year. Take us through a little bit about what it was like trying to sign such a high-caliber player. Bringing him to his direct rival.
Right. I think what helped is that we had some guys on our team that he was comfortable playing with and being a part of. There's no secrets. Sonaldo, Freddie Moojen, the Brazilian guys stick together. And
the Brazilian Storm, right?
I can talk about that.
So they stuck together, and so I think that helped. That certainly helped us. When it came time to talk to Jason and see how interested he was in coming to Wichita.
And now moving on from Jason, of course, we're all excited to see what he can do, especially tomorrow against his old team, because we remember the season opener last year, overtime 14-14. He scores his 5th and final goal, the winning goal, and we're hoping he can do that tomorrow for us against his old team. And now, has he said anything about what it's going to be like going back there?
No, he hasn't. He's a proper professional. He's gone about his day-to-day work, doing the things he needs to be successful, to help the team be successful. So at least as far as I know, there hasn't been much conversation about going into the game.
At the arena the other day. Sorry,
Cliff and I. You talk about him being a professional. And what I've seen a couple times I've come in, I've been in there a little bit early, it looks like he's often the first person there, ready to go, taped up, wants to train, anxious to get started. And that's really rare to find in somebody that's already accomplished what he has. I think his personality, his character is going to add so much to the wings as well.
And that's just it. When we went out to get guys this year, we looked for talent. Obviously, that talent is number one, but we were looking for guys with the right character. Guys that could come in and do the job but not disrupt the locker room and actually be good leaders. And then you're there at the beginning of practice, he's the first. If you'd have stayed to the end, you'd have seen he was the last one to leave the field too, because he's out doing extra stuff as well.
And that team culture is so important. As you go through a season, it's you're working your way through injuries, fighting back-to-back games and several games a week. That team character, that team culture is what's going to really help push you through that, not just the talent. So it's really important you bring in those players.
Exactly, and that's kind of where, like last year, the situation last year, we needed to, we needed to make sure the guys we brought in were the right character and were going to blend in well with the guys we already had.
So now moving on to the only off-season acquisition you made was a guy, the only one that we don't really know who didn't play in the MISL last year was Michael
Messley.
Messley. There we go. Tell us, a little bit about him.
Well, I saw Michael at the MISL Combine, and so we were able to watch him over the course of 3 days, and we had what's called an all-star selection. And so we, selected Michael, and so all the guys that were selected in the all-stars were invited to training camps. So he impressed up there. He came into training camp, and I mean, he's a good, solid defender, which is what we needed, and he's young, and he had the right character and attitude.
A little bit of size.
Right.
Size, aggressive, youth. He fills a role. He probably doesn't come in and immediately get in that top 2 lineups as a defender with Lemons and Victor's. Victor's gone now.
That's part of it, too. He understands that role.
Yeah.
And he accepts that role, and he works within that role.
Bringing a kid that's from the area, got Kansas roots, and bringing him along.
Yeah.
But he's also going to be someone who's going to challenge that role. He's
That's
not going
right.
to. He accepts where he is, but he's going to challenge and work and want to extend it and push for a bigger spot. I'm impressed. I think he's a good athlete to go along with. He's got a little bit of pace for his size. He's very strong, as you were saying. I mean, and that's something I think that was lacking a little bit defensively for you last year with the speed to go with some of the size. I mean, you had a little bit of size in some areas and speed in other areas, but this gives you a better combination. And he should. I would see him really pushing for spots as hard as he can.
No doubt. And he's just learning the game right now, and it's fun to watch the kid grow every day. I mean, he's learning and he's eager to learn. It's exciting to watch.
Coming back before we get totally off the topic of the All-Star selection, can you give us some insight on the combine? How did that work? Did every team get an All-Star selection and you just went in, you picked your 1 or 2 guys and you invited them to camp, and the other teams, they also didn't offer that player? Everybody got their automatic guy that they offered?
Well, it was basically kind of like a draft scenario. We can't call it a draft because of some legality reasons and stuff, but it was kind of like a draft scenario where we were looking at players. Okay, Wichita, who's your all-star selection? Okay, Michael Messley.
How did you pick your order?
The order was based on record, last year's record. So
worst to best.
Worst to best, correct. Yeah. Worst to best. So Chicago, being the expansion team, got first pick. And fortunately, since we lost that game in Rochester, we got the pick before Rochester, which was good because they were going to pick Michael Messley as well. So it worked out for us.
All right, and now speaking of, Michael came to training camp. Tell us a little bit about training camp this year, because it had to be a lot different than last year when you were looking for a lot more players. This year, looking for a lot fewer players. What was the biggest difference between training camp last year and this year?
The biggest difference was knowing that we had to identify only 1 or 2 players this year. Last year, we still needed to identify 6 players, that were going to fit the bill to earn a contract. So that was the biggest difference. Everything else with training camp, we ran pretty much the same. We mimicked it last year because we felt like we got a lot of good lift out of that training camp. We had very few muscle injuries, so we thought training camp went well as far as preparing us for the season, so we didn't change a whole lot with that.
I've got a question. Now you don't have to pick one player, but from the very last game last year to the end of training camp this year, who's the most improved player? Who's really primed to have a breakout season for the Wings this year?
The most improved player.
You can give me 2 or 3 if you'd like.
From the end of last year to the end of training camp this year.
Let me answer that one. That's Freddie Moojen, because he's sitting over here without a cast on his leg.
Here's the thing, though. Freddie Moojen, we knew what we were going to get from Freddie Moojen. Yeah. I mean, his level is always high. Yeah. I mean, there's no secrets. Anybody that's watched him knows that what he brings is always going to be a high level. He just got hit by the unlucky stick yesterday.
Like a lot of your guys. So that's kind of a. That was something that spread through the team pretty heavily, and it's a loaded question too, because you had so many guys that ended the year on IR that you either brought back or you released.
Right.
TJ, Tajani, a couple guys, but yeah. I mean,
I would say most improved from last year this year is Kevin Tenite. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because he performs now at a high level from the start of practice to the end of practice, and so I really think, having that year he had last year, going along with his opportunity this summer in Guatemala with the national team, really helped to mature him,
confidence,
and give him confidence.
I see a big difference in him in training, just the way he approaches the training, his confidence, where he steps in, what he does, how he participates. A very, very different player from what he was last year.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree. So I would say he's probably, from the end of last year to where we are now, he's probably the most improved player.
So for making the MISL All-Rookie team last year, and improving that much more over the summer. So we should expect some even bigger things from him this year.
I mean, he's put himself in a situation where we have to pick him every game. That's how well he's playing and what he's doing. So when we look at the lineup, we look at our team, Kevin's playing so well, we have to pick him.
And that's something I'd like to talk a little bit about, because with all the players you brought in, some real quality, right, your selection is going to be very different. I'm not going to ask you to talk about that, but in relation to that selection is obviously going to very much change your style of play. I've watched some of the things you've been doing in training. I'd like to talk about what your expectations, how you see this blending together, what the way you're going to approach the game this year as opposed to how you approached it last year, where you set up your line of confrontation, a halfway line, try to keep things tight, looking to hit on the counter. How is it going to change this year?
We're more dynamic this year. We're going to be more dynamic. Our movement is more dynamic. We got guys now that, last year I felt like we just weren't indoor smart enough to know how to press, and this year we've got that knowledge and background with us, so we could probably press a little bit more and get away with it this year. So the way I would say we're going to approach is way more dynamic this year.
Well, I see the movement's much different as well. The way that you use the ball with possession, we got players I think that are much better in their possession. And you're not going to have to, and you're bringing them forward, I think, from what I've seen, you're coming forward as a block very nicely, so you're not leaving a lot of gaps. I think that's, with the movement and the rotation of position, I think the fans are going to be very surprised with the difference.
I think so. I think it's going to be, like I said, we've got the tools in place this year to play that way. So that's one of the reasons we're going to do it and go that way.
How about taking guys from an outdoor game and bringing them indoor that have never played it and trying to get them to understand the target man role when you already got Freddie Moojen and guys like this, that's what they are. They're ready for that. They play like the old style Jungles and Chapmans and Borjas.
Well, and you brought one in.
Right.
You brought one in.
Andrew Hoffman.
But
right,
when Freddie went down, all the guys that had injuries last year, Edvin, Kevin Teneyck, all these guys played that role. How much does it help now them coming out of the midfield? Your midfield's loaded this year.
Right.
So they're coming out of the midfield understanding what ball the striker wants. What ball does my target guy want? When does he want it? Does he want it early?
We have a pure target now as well.
We actually have two pure targets.
Yeah, exactly.
Freddie and Andrew now.
And when Freddie went down, you had zero.
We had zero, right. We had zero. I mean, zero pure target players, And so that goes back to our, off-season identifying what we needed.
In the indoor game, that target guy, you want him to get the ball early, right?
Well, and that's our system now. Our system is built around trying to find the target.
So now transitioning into kind of our final topic, we've been through your off season, your preparation for the actual season, and then tomorrow night you leave, you go to Kansas City. You're taking two former Comets players who played from last year, Tiguino and Jason, with you. How do you see that game panning out? Is it fairly competitive, I would imagine, just like last year's season opener?
It's got to be every bit as competitive. Every bit as competitive, because I call it bulletin board material. Okay, Kansas City's got a whole bunch of bulletin board material that they can put up on their bulletin board that they want to whip us real bad. So it's going to be an extremely competitive game.
And they've made some additions as well. Kim's brought in the Danish players, and and they look very strong.
Right, and so I mean, even though they lost, Jason, we got Jason and Tiguino, which strengthened us. I think Kansas City's now a little bit of an unknown. And that's going to make them dangerous this year.
Well, we know Osapor's distribution out of the midfield is ridiculous. So him with anybody around him with any kind of ability, he's obviously a target guy that plays in the midfield instead of striker for them. So much comes off his foot.
That, and you got Leo Gibson, who's a former midfielder playing in the defense. So he's got to know how to attack coming out of the back.
Keeps the ball well.
Exactly, he keeps the ball very well. They've added some players now that are going to have 2-3 years experience. Ryan Young and Brian Harris, they're going into their third year.
Right.
So they're in good positions to really lead the team as well.
What about Brian Perez? You started to say they have two reasons to be frustrated. We've got 4 Comets players playing in Wichita now.
They
thought, maybe he's a little old, we won't sign him up, right? With the obvious 2 that just came, but Beasley had a pretty good year last year, and he's got a little bit of chip on his shoulder. Walked over to me the other day and said, "Do I look 33?" And I went, well, no. He's still 5 times faster than I was at 18,
Yeah, and I think that's been good for the competition in the squad. Has been very good for Jamar because he looks very sharp right now.
Perez, to me, seeing the indoor game from the beginning of last year, he played the year before in Missouri, didn't get a lot of minutes, right? Comes back, plays for you, and to me, he's developed into quite an indoor player. He looks like an all-star to me in preseason, and he very well could be with the amount of guys that are playing around him. I mean, at some point, pick your poison, and he's going to get a lot of opportunity.
That and the fact in this offseason, he dedicated to working on the areas of the game that he was lower in, and which was his fitness and his defensive abilities. And if you watch him play now, you see him. He's up and back with the best of them, and his defending has gotten a lot better. So I expect him to be even better this year too.
And that's so critical in the indoor game anyway.
Yes.
Everybody's got to be able to do their defensive
That's right.
duties.
Speaking of the weapons, here's a good stat. Out of the top 5 players, I have my MISL.com up right here, or /USL. Miggy, Kevin Tenike, Jason, and Victor. Solace number 1. But other than that, the next 4 guys right there with them, those are the top 5 3-point goal getters from last year.
Okay, that's a good stat. I did not know
And
that.
4 of the top guys from beyond the multi-point scoring from there are on your squad right now.
Well, that means we're dangerous outside the 3-point arc as well.
It also means you can be dangerous late in the game and comeback
Right.
situations. You've got multiple people that can score from out there. That really opens up the opportunities for you.
Exactly. And then, the thing is, those 4 you just named, one of them's not even with us right now.
Yep.
And so we're going to, once we add Victor to the lineup, we just strengthen ourselves again.
So before we end it, any last questions? Anything else from you guys?
But I'd like to know a little bit about what's going on with league ownership and talking about expansion. Chicago came in. I know that's a constant thing. And from the year before the Wings came back last year as an expansion team, we all were watching pretty closely. All of us that are from Wichita and have been around this for years were watching going, hey, what's this league look like? And it's tenfold better than what it was 2 years ago.
Right.
So what's your forecast for the future?
I think only good things, because what the league has done is they've set up a system in place to where if an owner's going to come into this league, okay, it's someone that can sustain that club. Everyone looks at the PSL and say, well, God, they've added 10 teams.
To $10,000 commitment.
They lose about 10 teams every year as well, too. So they really set the structure up in place to where I think, if teams do come into this league, they're going to be here for a while. It's not going to be in and out.
Yeah, and do you see the PASL being a stepping stone to come into the MISL, and an owner that has the San Diego's, Tacoma's, Tattoo coming back with Dallas?
Dallas, I do.
Yeah.
I doubt, because they're very professional-minded, and so I'm not sure the PASL is going to have the professional atmosphere and feel that Dallas is looking for. So I'm hopeful that they say, okay, this is not what we want. We want a little bit more professionalism. Not to knock what the PASL is doing, but in comparison to what we've got going, Dallas is going to say that's where we want to be.
And Tattoo is a consummate professional as well. He's a businessman. He's a great. I worked at soccer camps for years down there in Athens, Texas, and know him pretty well, and he's a real upfront, top-class individual. I like him. I think he'd be a perfect person to bring in.
I think so too. I think it would be a great addition to the league. I've also heard that there's been talks with St. Louis. Nothing. It's completely unofficial.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing came straight from USL for me. It's just
that's what Wings fans want to hear.
Unofficial word that there has been some talk of possibly St. Louis coming back as well.
Hopefully it's behind Daryl Duran, which he's been knocking it around, I heard, for a few years too. And with his name involved, that's an immediate rivalry for the Wichita Wings. So.
I mean, that you bring Dallas and St. Louis back in, and now you've got a nice little I-70, I-35
How about
competition.
The player pool with St. Louis, Scott Gallagher, and clubs like that they didn't have back in the 80s that they have now, that are, they got 70 guys playing in the MLS, I believe, a couple guys in the EPL, so their player pool, now those guys start to see the game, and now maybe you're looking at those guys as well.
I think so. I mean, there are a lot of good indoor soccer players, a lot of very good. The problem is there's not that many teams. Mm-hmm. You only can roster 18 players, and so, the pool to select players is very small. So once we get more teams in here, that's going to help the game grow immensely.
All right, LeBaron, thanks for being with us. Good luck tomorrow. I'm sure
you.
we'll all rather be watching or listening to Cliff calling the game.
Yep.
So good luck, and that's going to do it for LeBaron Hollimon, head coach of the Wichita Wings. When we come right back for our second segment, captain of the Wichita Wings, Freddie Moojen, will be here to talk to us. We'll be right back here on 316 Soccer Show.